How's it going, guys? Welcome to this workout to improve your center splits. My name is Alex, and all you need to know is that this isn't going to be the typical follow-along style workout that you usually see on my channel. I'm going to walk you through the foundation of my stretching routine and kind of highlight all of the technical elements that have helped me along the way. So with that, thank you to the Patreon people who've been supporting the page. You guys are awesome and you have all of my appreciation. Let's get right into it. All right, so first things first, before we get into any stretching, you're gonna wanna warm up your lower half. Some of my favorite ways to do that are sitting on a stationary bike and just cycling for about 5 minutes, going for a brisk walk or maybe even a run. If you don't really have too much space available, just doing some jumping jacks for maybe 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off for about 5 minutes will do you just right. So after you're nice and warmed up, let's get into some fundamental stretches just to start loosening up everything in the lower half. We're gonna spread our legs nice and wide and start engaging the groin and the hamstrings. You're gonna alternate touching your feet side to side. And once you start feeling nice and loose, you're gonna slowly turn the head down lower and lower and start folding your hands over your head. The idea here is to let the weight of your upper body sink you deeper and deeper into the stretch. And one thing that you wanna keep note on is to hinge at the hips as much as possible with a straight posture versus curling your back. Hinging at the hips is what will strengthen your hamstrings. All right, so once we're nice and loose here, we're gonna start moving to the sides to open up the hips and open up the groin a little bit. You wanna keep the blade end of your opposite foot touching the ground, so that means keeping your foot completely flat. And you wanna think about taking this knee and bowing it out to the side. So I like to kind of press into it, keep it dynamic, find where my body has space for the day, and just keep alternating and getting into both sides. I'll sit here for maybe about 2 reps to 4 reps on each side before moving on to the next stretch. From here, we're gonna come on to our butts and we're gonna continue opening up the hips a little bit. Although it's not directly related to the splits, opening up your hips and getting them loose is gonna give us a lot more comfort in those higher end split stretches. So internal rotations here, think about bringing the knee to the floor. If you need an extra push, reach forward for each rep. From here, we're gonna start working on the groin a little bit with the butterfly stretch. So soles of the feet together, grab a nice grip with your hands, and just flap your butterfly wings for a little bit. The idea here, similar to the hamstring pendulum, is that you want to straighten your posture and hinge at the hips. It's always better to fold with a straight back and hinge at the hips than it is to curl your back and go farther. As you've gotten those nice and warmed up, we're gonna go ahead and come into a straddle. I like to take it one leg at a time, keeping my outside hand on the outside foot, inside hand in the middle, and just bringing my elbow down. And I'll just go through some pulses here, maybe about 5 to 10 reps for each side. It's a great way to start pulling a little more on the hamstrings and opening up the adductors for those splits. Lastly, you'll grab onto both feet and you'll go for the big center split. And following that same trend, instead of curling our backs, you want to keep them nice and straight, you can put your hands to the sides of your hips and use them to press you forward so that you can keep your posture straight. All right, so the last loosen up stretch, you're gonna wanna find a wall or something to support you, and we're gonna go for some leg swings side to side. This is one of my favorite stretches to gauge how I'm feeling for the day, whether it's really tense and I need more warm-up work, or whether I'm feeling nice and fresh and I can get right into the workout. All right, guys, now we're gonna get into the core of the strengthening and the stretching with some PNF technique. And for those interested, PNF stands for proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. Forget that term. All it really means is that you're taking your muscles to the extent of their range of motion, and then you're engaging them at that extent. So that does 2 things for you. One, after you relax them at that extent, it allows them to stretch just a little bit further. And secondly, as you engage them at that extent, you are training them. So as you recover through sleep and good nutrition, once your muscles repair, you'll come back to that stretch being stronger in the position, which will allow your brain to push the muscles a little further into the stretch. And that's really all flexibility is. All right, so the first PNF stretch we're gonna get into is called the horse stance. So go ahead and stand wide. almost as wide as you can go, and come down into a squat. You want to keep your feet positioned so that your toes are pointing outwards, not necessarily straight to the side because then you'll have a hard time keeping your balance front to back, but just slightly pointed forward. And you come down into this deep squat so that your hips are about level with your knee, and you can just practice coming down into a squat and even moving from side to side. And you'll feel that as you gain your flexibility, you'll be able to come deeper and deeper with a wider and wider stance. One thing that I like to do is pretend that I'm some sort of water bender from the Avatar animated series and go through these very fluid motions as if I'm bending water. You know, the push and the pull, they go through a lot of different hip ranges of motions that push my flexibility. So after I finish pretending, I'll widen my squat a little bit, come a little deeper, come a little higher, and that's how you can start engaging these muscles in an active stretch. For the second one, what you're gonna need is a slippery floor. And if you don't have one, then something to reduce the friction. I like to use 2 bags or 2 towels. What we're gonna do is place our feet on top of them and ever so slowly, with control, lower ourselves into as low of a split as we can hold. It's important to externally rotate your hips, so think about sticking your butt out and leaning your chest forward if you need to. And you're gonna come down as far as you can handle and then safely catch yourself at the bottom. So it's very important here that if you're very fatigued, you don't overdo it because it's very easy to pull some muscles in your groin if you overexhaust them. So I usually do this in reps of 1 to 3, depending how long I hold it in the bottom and depending on how fatigued I am. Other key things are to make sure that your heels stay pointed down so that you have support, and always be ready to catch yourself. All right, so the third exercise that we're gonna be throwing into the PNF routine is the wide stance good morning. So you can think of your regular good morning exercise where you're hinging at the hips and coming up, except we're gonna do it in the widest split that we can support. So you wanna come out with your legs bent here, and again, think of external rotation in the hips, sticking the butt out, and you're gonna hinge at the hips with a straight back and come down as low as you possibly can, and then return on up. And as you get a little farther and farther into the stretch, you can support it a little deeper, coming out and coming back up. This is a great one to work the adductors in order to support the stance and also strengthen your hamstrings as you're involving and incorporating that hinge action from the hips. So I like to do these in reps of around 3 to 5 as I'm getting warmed up. And as I get closer and closer to my maximum depth, I'll just keep it to about 1 rep to not overdo it. So one thing a lot of people forget about when it comes to the splits is how important your glute muscles are for holding your splits open. Because we're stretching the muscles in the groin, your adductors, it's important that if these are the antagonists, we use your protagonists to pull them and support them farther and farther apart. So in order to work the glutes, we're gonna do a couple of exercises. The first one, you're gonna be in a seated position and simply swipe your leg out to a straddle position, back and forth. Go ahead and do both legs individually, and if you need to, go ahead and hold it here, feel the glute engagement, and then return. Once you get nice and warmed up there, you can go ahead and bring both legs at a time, and you can see how far you can pull your legs and support them in a straddle. All right, the second one I like to call the Whizzing Dog. You'll see exactly why. You're gonna be in the tabletop position. You're gonna lift one knee off the ground, bring it off to the side as if you're a dog marking its territory, and then point your leg out with the straight toe, return, and retract. You can go for about 5 reps here. It's a great way to get started, and if you're getting more and more advanced, then it's great to use the bands in order to add some extra resistance, or even ankle weights. And the third one I like to do here is the half frog split. So you'll need a sliding floor again, or maybe some socks. You're gonna put your toe on your slider, and you're gonna extend out into the farthest split that you can manage, and then raise your leg up from there, come back down to your slider, and slide it back. Again, About 3 to 5 reps per each leg is a great way to start training the glute. Try to keep the legs straight at all times and keep the toes pointed. So then the very last part is in order to improve our stretch tolerance. And the best way to do that is by holding a stretch in an uncomfortable position. So what I like to do is to just hold the splits. And the best way I found of doing that is to find a slippery floor or some kind of sliders that is put up against the wall. And what you want to do is put your heels and your butt against the wall to help you make sure everything is nice in line. And you're just going to slowly lower and lower yourself into the splits. It's also very, very helpful to have some kind of material underneath your groin so that once you get to a certain depth, you can begin to relax and hold the stretch without too much discomfort. So few things I found that work are yoga blocks, since they're nice and soft, or you can use a series of pillows as well. So you're gonna come down here, you're gonna be nice and patient, and you're gonna hold this for really as long as you need to. I do it for about 4 to 5 reps, with each rep lasting between 1 minute to 3 minutes, depending on how stiff I am. And if you need some extra persuasion, as I like to call it, you can feel free to get a friend or some weight to put on your lower back and to help push your butt down just a little bit. All right guys, so that's the stretching routine that I've been doing for about the last 155 days or so. It's helped me go from about here to here in the center splits. Hopefully you found some useful tips and tricks. If you did, hit the thumbs up on the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.